Let's go now to our friend Beimnet Abebe from Galaxy Trading. As always, Beimnet, welcome to Galaxy Brains.
Thank you for having me.
What's happening? I'm not really sure what's going on in markets. Obviously, we've had a correction in Bitcoin lower, I think, since we last spoke. But broadly, what are you following right now?
Fixed income markets. We've had a little bit of a retracement in the inflation narrative, right? Things were easing over the past couple months, and people kind of got lulled into thinking that inflation was kind of under control domestically and abroad. And now you've had two back-to-back G10 economies print higher than expected CPI. You had Canadian CPI yesterday or earlier this weekend. You had Australian CPI last night.
And both were hot?
Both were hot. And that caused fixed income markets to sell off. In addition, you have dollar yen breaking through 160, well through intervention levels and stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, wasn't 140 like an important level a long time ago?
150 and et cetera. Yeah, but now you're through 160, and you are in uncharted territory at least over the past 10, 20 years or so.
Are the Japanese the largest holders of U.S. bonds?
One of the largest holders of U.S. bonds. And so there's a lot of, Twitter chatter about all these real money accounts in Japan that are now going to be forced to sell some of their fixed income holdings because they're so underwater on their portfolios. But yeah, it kind of seems like the evolution of Japan is kind of moving towards more of a monetary policy response rather than just outright currency intervention, which I think would be bad for bond markets if you had, Japanese rates rise, and they're a large money center for Asia as well. And
right.
So if those funding rates start to go up, that should have reverberations into the bond market globally. But high level, we had a lot of good data in the U.S. and bonds repriced pretty aggressively. But, when you think about it, how much can the Fed really cut? I think they should cut because there's a lot of signs that the labor market's cooling and inflation's fine. And so, I think it's appropriate to cut, but I think the cut probably gets you to you should go to 4% if you're going to cut.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, I've gone back and forth because the data is just so unpredictable, as we saw with, Canada and Australia. And if you look at, certain high frequency things I think Jim Bianco tweeted out a photo of TSA and flight things of U.S. folks. You're at all-time highs in terms of
tons of flying happening.
Tons of flying activity, right? So it's a really hard picture.
It's kind of like chopflation, right? We're not it's not really trending in either direction. Sometimes it looks like it's getting better, then it looks like it's getting worse.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's not getting dramatically worse yet. Right?
Yeah,
it's not it's not really reflation yet, right?
It's not, but it's
chopflation?
That the moment the economy starts to turn and we start easing a little bit, that the reflation stuff comes back. And so I'm it's so hard. And so in my head, I'm really the one thing you're not supposed to own is back end U.S. duration, 7 years and greater.
You don't want the long bonds.
You don't. You don't. It's just there's not much value there. It's inflation is going to average anywhere from 2 to 5%, right? And so your return above inflation on being in that paper isn't great. And to be honest, basically every other asset class has outperformed fixed income for a while now. And so it's why put your money in something that's negatively real yielding when you have alternatives. And so I really don't like the back end of the U.S. curve right now. That's kind of my take. And then Bitcoin, I mean, I am not that constructive on a move higher in the near term. I think upside is limited. I think that there's a catalyst in terms of the presidential debate that's happening this week, and if you do get some crypto mentions, I think you could get a little bit of a short squeeze. But in terms of the supply that the market has had to absorb, it's pretty nuts.
You have the Germans. I guess they seized coin they've been selling.
Yeah,
there's
we've
some
heard
in Asia.
Of some flows out east as well.
You have the GOX coming up.
When the headline hits of billions of dollars of Bitcoin being transferred to people and to exchanges, that's going to cause the market to move lower. And I think 60K held because there's a lot of short covering and people are like tactically like that's a good level. But, I saw a chart last night. I don't know if it was good or not, but in terms of like BTC balances held by OTC desks, it shot up a lot recently.
Yeah, those charts, that's like Glassnode data usually.
It's
But,
tough. But
yeah, we know they don't cover. But for inflows, I think it's a decent marker. It's more for balances. It's like I'm pretty sure not one of Galaxy's wallets is on that list, but like people are sending coins to OTC desks. I mean, if you see it, even if they just track one,
absolutely.
and it goes up.
And you've also had outflows out of the ETFs most days.
So what do you think? I've been writing about Mt. Gox, right? And just on that specifically, I would say the argument I've been making is not that there won't be selling or that it isn't a lot of coins, but that they're more diamond-handed than people think, and they're more and there's less coins, I think, really available to actually be sold from there than the news stories. They say 9 billion, 140,000
No, but
coins.
at the end of the day, even if it's 1 billion, that's a lot of supply to take down at the lows in the market when it's already taking down a lot of supply.
Yeah, my whole argument has been not that it doesn't go down, but that it's not going to be as bad as you think.
Yeah.
So if the market overreacts, then you could look at that as a buying opportunity. Yeah. But it is going to hit, and that probably is going to. There will be net new supply coming on for sure.
And so it's a tricky market. But yeah, I think the way the market's positioned, at least in the option space, is kind of how I'm thinking about the market, that Q3 is most likely going to be very supply oriented, and that in Q4 you'll have a broader rally as you get more.
Quite common in Bitcoin world too, if you look at the seasonality.
But that's what the options market is pricing in terms of like
where
December vols
end of December,
upside is bid on a relative basis.
Yeah. And then you're talking about supply too. Outside of Bitcoin, at least we know we're talking about like sort of unlocking seized supply or bankrupt supply in the case of Gox, but the altcoin space.
The altcoin space is infinite supply,
and there's a lot of it coming unlocked. A lot of the projects that raised in 21, they're finally getting. They were on like literally 3-year cliffs.
Yeah,
and that's now.
No, exactly.
But
here's the thing: you said it best. I think you put together the information. It's like $20 billion in crypto VCs,
crypto liquid hedge funds, total AUM $20 billion,
$80 billion of unlocks
in the next 2.5 years.
Like
who's gonna buy them?
And so the supply story is really going to catch up to the market.
Yeah.
And
well, especially if the demand side hasn't really come here yet. We don't see the, retail's aping into, the Mag 7.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? They're not aping into Dogecoin. They're not aping into Bitcoin as far as we can tell, right? So if the liquid asset management sector in crypto is only 20 billion total, it can't take down that supply either. So,
we're coming at
the VCs created a lot of tokens.
It's magic internet money out of thin air.
Yeah. No proof of work at all.
No, fair enough. And there's a lot of good things happening in crypto.
There are, for sure.
Phenomenal. But in terms of the valuations, it's very tough to wrap your head around because, I believe in tech and, the adoption will be there. But not everything can be worth $1 billion. Right out the gate. It's insanely hard to build a $1 billion business.
Yeah.
But how many $1 billion protocols do we have that make like $5 million a year? If that.
Yeah, not many. In fact, we were looking at of the top 20 coins, like on coinmarketcap.com, which obviously includes stable coins and stuff too.
Yeah.
I think only 5 are the result of venture capital. So you've got $100 billion since 2015 invested in the crypto ecosystem by venture capitalists, according to our research. Not all of that went into token projects, but of that, probably thousands of tokens created out of that money, and only 5 are in the top 20. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, where is that value? Token VCs, where is that value? Right? And right, Ethereum, not venture backed, right? ICO, right? Cardano up there in the top 10. I don't think it's a good project, but not venture backed, ICO, right? Like Dogecoin, fair launch. Bitcoin, fair launch. Right? Stable coins don't even really count. Right?
They shouldn't.
But I'm saying, show me, right?
Yeah.
It's basically like Solana and Avalanche and a couple others that actually have venture money
top 20,
that are actually in the top 20. It's very few. So it's also guys, please invest in and build stuff people actually want.
Realistically, the thing people want is a blockchain that solves security concerns, and that's scalable, and that's fast.
Fast and cheap.
And like the
That's the holy grail.
That's the holy grail.
Problem
And
is,
there's a couple of them that are like, going to be very close to like Visa level, like TPS and things like that. But how many of them do you need?
That's the other thing.
And like, what is the value of that network?
And this the
like,
whole.
it's like, so it's so hard.
That's the whole thing. Like, how much block space do we actually need, right? Like, you've got Ethereum and its L2s.
Yeah.
I mean, if if that really long term works, how many other blockchains do you really need?
You don't really need that many.
I don't think so.
How many Bitcoin L2s do you know launching?
We got some stuff we're putting out on this. So I don't want to. We'll save this for a later episode.
No, absolutely.
But we think there's 65 minimum that have fundraised or announced, right? Like, I don't think Bitcoin can support. I don't mean the market. I don't think Bitcoin, the network, will be able to really house more than like 2 or 3 of these things, and that's if they have the money to actually post to
skyrocket
Bitcoin.
Though. Eventually.
Exactly. So tricky. But yeah, agreed. I mean, I think a couple. I think Solana's been interesting to me because at least it's different than the Ethereum ecosystem, like technologically. But like, how many alternatives to ETH is there room for, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you get all these different roll-ups that have different features. Like, why do you really need another blockchain, or should it just be a roll-up? I'm not sure. But anyway, people are still creating those new blockchains. Though.
I know.
We'll see.
I mean, but yeah.
Well, interesting.
There are consequences to printing money.
And what just seasonally in the summer too, right? We're about to enter. Like, next week is July 4th. We're really entering like the height of the summer now. It's going to be just weak, right? Markets. What do you think? I mean, stock markets are open. Crypto markets are 24/7. But they say like sell in May and go away. Like, there's typically like low volume in the summer.
Yeah, no, I think it's really tough.
It is leading into a presidential election, though.
Yeah, debate,
so there's going to be some excitement.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really tough to call. I think that that there's going to be less staffing than usual across the street.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it's really tough.
Yeah.
I think equities, they've rallied a lot, and so folks are going to look at earnings and be like, show me that you're still doing well.
Right.
Right. Show me that you're still growing.
You're not overvalued.
Yeah, and all that. But I don't even know if people care about value right now. It doesn't make much sense.
Well, and we're likely to have the Ethereum spot ETFs launch perhaps in the next few weeks.
Next 2 weeks, yeah.
So that could cause excitement. I mean,
no, it's
I know
a big
people are kind of
supply
bearish
event.
on that.
I mean,
but
it's not going to go well.
You don't think so?
People have not had enough time to market the product.
True, but like there was no real Bitcoin marketing on like day one. Although it did have a nice like drumbeat for months leading into it.
Yes, you had Larry Fink go on TV about it, right? Like there's the marketing behind, like there were ads on newspapers, television.
That's true.
Right? It doesn't have the same marketing, and it's also just the worst product. And so, and everything we've known so far is that like crypto is a buy the rumor, sell the news event.
And even the Bitcoin ETFs were in the beginning, right? We had
all
a
of them.
strong
The Bitcoin
dip
futures ETF was a buy the rumor, sell the news situation. The spot ETF was that. The ETH futures ETF was the same thing.
Yep.
And so I don't see anything different. The only thing different this time is you might not actually rally going into that. Right.
I mean, we're not really rallying
now.
Yeah. So to me, it's like the one thing I would say is that I feel like it might being bearish on the ETH ETFs is actually like kind of consensus.
Yeah.
And I think that might
I don't know.
That might be mid curving.
Look at the price action. It went from like a 2-handle to like the high threes, almost 4.
Yeah. True.
Like,
but well, that's true, but I mean, like now everyone's like, oh, they're gonna even on a relative basis, they're gonna underwhelm the Bitcoin ETFs, right?
I think the trade is really in the ETH ecosystem thereafter.
Yeah.
Right. So you have $10 billion, $11 billion of ETH that goes from being idle ETH to potentially redeemable ETH that can be used in the ETH ecosystem. It can be used to stake, farm on DeFi, etc. And I think the ETF opens the door to kind of more investors looking at like DeFi in a more critical way and from an investment perspective. And like, well, how should I really be thinking about ETH? And so what I really like, if I had to trade anything from the long side going in with the ETF, are the DeFi protocols. Right?
Interesting.
That are actually valuable from the sense that the tokens, right? You had Uniswap turn on the fee switch, or propose to turn on the fee switch. You've got protocols like Maker, Aave, and Compound that make real revenues and that trade at multiples that are, let's say 20-ish, maybe like
somewhat
a bit
reasonable.
less, depends on how you want to think about it. But these are companies or protocols that trade at reasonable valuations.
And they actually have usage.
Yeah. Multi-chain.
So you're thinking that the ETFs say, wait a second, let's learn more. It creates an educational thing. And then actually people say, well, not that I should buy the ETF, I should get real ETH and maybe do some of this real stuff or
Yes.
like on chain. Yeah, to me, it's like if you're going to be the world computer, you don't want to like take the keys or the gas or the whatever for the world computer and lock it in a vault. You want to plug it into the wall.
Yeah.
So to me, I've never liked this idea about the ETH ETF, whereas most Bitcoiners are really hodlers and they think of it like digital gold.
But ETH, you should be using it.
Yeah.
And like figuring out stuff to do. And so, I'm optimistic for like the rest of crypto and like people figuring out what to do with stuff.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm not sure yet whether we're going to record next week because it will be July 4th. But thank you so much, as always, my friend Beimnet, for coming on. And maybe we'll see you next week. If not, we'll be back after that. Everybody.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.